My name is Candace Sanderson, and I want to welcome you to episode 2 in the Consciousness series. In the last video, I introduced someone we all know, our observer. Some may call this our personality or perhaps our ego. There are many names for this non physical aspect of us, the one that sometimes offers a running commentary about how we look, how we do things, or should have done things. As I recap elements from the first episode, let me share with you the messengers have told me about something called the point of existence. It's a way to visualize consciousness, and by visualizing it, we can start using it as a tool. Often, this tiny point of existence hangs out in the body, so much so that we think we are our physical bodies. But to expand our consciousness, our awareness, we need to disengage that point from the body. We need to change it to a different form, to a field of existence. When it morphs from a particle to a field state, it becomes a three-dimensional globe of life force energy. And in that sacred field state, we can connect to the subtle energies that surround us. You see, our guides and angels are always around, but we're not equipped to listen to their warnings, nor do we hear their words of wisdom when we use only our five physical senses. Those senses that we were born with are marvelous for helping us navigate the 3D world, but they are not so great in managing the landscape of the 5D, that non-physical realm where our guidance team reside. Those realms of energy that were our homes before we incarnated on this planet as humans. Let's get back to a dilemma that affects many of us. With that point of existence neatly tucked inside our body, we often think that we are our physical bodies. So, how on earth can we expand if we are our bodies? Enter the observer. When we first recognize the presence of the observer, we can pat ourselves on the back because we've taken the first step in expanding consciousness. The observer is part of a field of energy. So when we recognize that observer, we've expanded our consciousness into that field state. That observer is automatically engaged when we expand. So when we notice the observer, we now have this opportunity to interact with them, not just observe them as they observe us. We don't have to listen to their rants about our performance, but we can actually get to know them and start a conversation with them. Often we do not recognize our observer for what they really are. Let's not limit them by thinking of them as our ego or our personality. They're more than that nosy and sometimes bossy commentator. Although those aspects might be easier for us to recognize, our observers are much larger than that. They can serve a purpose that is sacred. Let's expand our vision of our observers. I think of mine as a way shower. She is smart enough to have grown from that particle to a field state without any help from me. And now that we know that he or she exists, we can start interacting with them with intent, with purpose. They're waiting for us to interact purposefully and start exploring. So if you did the assignment last week, which was to notice your observer, then bravo. If you haven't yet, it's not too late to start. Recognizing this sometimes very intimate part of ourselves is key in learning to expand. Expanding. I'm talking about moving from the 3D into the 5D and beyond. The messengers tell me that expansion is a continuum. So if we wish to touch that space where We're in the subtle energies of spirit, of where the non-physical reside. We can use our observer to do just that. So I invite you to expand your perception, expand your awareness, expand your definition of your observer. We know they are automatically triggered throughout the day, but let's give that some thought. They pop in now and then to comment on something we've done, but let's start engaging them prior to their comments. Let's intentionally invite them for a conversation. I often think of my observer as a placeholder, or maybe I should say a space holder, since she's just outside my physical body in a space, in an area that is not physical. During meditations, if I happen to veer too far off the course and I find myself light years away, I can always return to the safety and comfort of the 3D by way of my observer. So, in a sense, she's my protector. She hangs out close to my physical body, keeping that 3D aspect of me safe and sound, while the other part of me, that non physical part of me, explores the cosmos. But I can use the observer like a dial or a glide bar to push my experiences farther into the unknown spaces of the non physical. We do this all the time during the dream state, but we can do it while we are in an awake state. I find it easier to do in between states like meditation. Okay, let me stop here for a moment and explain a few things. I want you to think of this formula: thought, energy, action. What you think produces energy, and then the energy fuels the action. So by using that formula, thought, energy, action, you can begin to understand the power of your thoughts. By air quotes, seeing your observer as a slider or a dial to use to move your awareness, your point of existence, your consciousness toward a more subtle field of energy, you will see this formula in action. Your thoughts, moving the observer farther away from the 3D, will result in your awareness expanding. Here's the fun part that most children get. Start pretending. Make it up. Imagine that you see something or you hear something. Don't judge it, just go with it. Imagine a sound engineer's panel. You're at the control at a recording studio. Now, I want you to imagine a knob or a slider on one side of the instrument panel. Now, imagine that as your observer. And as you dial up or slide the bar upward like a volume control, more of your awareness by way of your observer will expand. Feels like you're making this up, right? Don't judge, just play with it. Why? It's all about the energy flow. When you judge, either saying this doesn't work, or actually, if you say, wow, this is great, but that judgment interferes with the flow, the natural flow of the energy. So put that part of you aside for now. You can make judgments later, after the fact, after the experience is over. Let me share an example where I was fully convinced I was making things up, only to discover how wrong I was. I have shared a story about attending Lifeline, a program at Monroe Institute in Virginia. And this program offers exercises in soul rescue. We were supposed to retrieve the souls of people who had recently passed away, but had not yet completed their transition fully. I didn't know whether I believed this or not. You see, the reason I attended Lifeline was because it was a prerequisite for another program. I had no vested interest in the outcome. I didn't care. Let me say something about Monroe Institute if you're not familiar with it. They use sound-based technology, binaural beats, and a combination of other things, and it's called Monroe Sound Science. But all you have to do as a participant is put on the headset and listen to the frequencies. And along with just a little verbal guidance, that does all the work for you. You just have to kick back and relax. I remember the first exercise, and I started laughing. We were supposed to find a newcomer, someone who had recently passed, and help them transition. After a few minutes of nothing happening, I spoke a man's name, Robert. I won't say his last name, but I can tell you it has 3 syllables. It is not an uncommon name, but I don't know of anyone by that last name. The next words that came to me were Topeka, Kansas, a place I've never been, nor do I know anyone from Topeka, followed by the word Jackson. For whatever reason, I knew Jackson was not a family name. And this is when I began laughing. I now realize it was the observer who made me laugh, as she was saying, "Isn't it funny how your brain just makes up information to fill in the blanks?" Well, it turned out all that information I received was true. I thought I would have bet money on it that I was making it up. When this first exercise ended, I Googled the man's name. I put in Topeka, Kansas, and then I added the word obituary. I could not believe what I saw. Within seconds, his name popped up on my screen. He had passed 3 months ago to the day of this retrieval. And the name Jackson? I was correct. It was not a family name. It was both the county where he worked, and the name Jackson County was part of his place of business. But what really struck me was something else that I read in the online obituary. He was a psychologist, just like me. And on a level that I really wasn't ready to understand at the time, I had this aha moment. I realized, oh, that's why we connected. We both had the same energy vibration, the same energy frequency, the same pattern of being psychologists. In the rest of the 6-day program at Monroe, the same thing occurred. I received sometimes first, middle, and last names of people who had passed and the places where they lived. Verifiable information. This taught me something about the importance of our thoughts. I had no idea why or how I thought of his name, all the details. I believed I had invented the information, but I soon discovered the truth. The energy fields of the non-physical that surround us are very subtle, so subtle that they often escape us. We don't even recognize that it is incoming information that our brain interprets. No, you see, our 5 physical senses are too clunky for this subtle, finer energy. So what's left? We assume we invented the material, that it's fantasy or it's wishful thinking. So let's apply this to our observer. My example. So let's apply my example to the observer. We each have an observer, but perhaps we've discounted the importance of the role they play. The observer is us. It is that non-physical aspect of our physical body. The true us, our essence, is so powerful. It cannot fully function within the limits of the 3D world. It's connected to everything there is. Just like my experience at Monroe Institute, at Lifeline, when the information came through, I immediately engaged my training as a psychologist, and I thought of the incoming data as confabulation, my brain trying to fill in empty spaces. Now I know differently. The information was so subtle that I did not recognize it in real time, but my brain automatically interpreted it and relayed it in a way that I could understand it. the spoken word, my spoken word. I was speaking data, name, city, state, place of business, but I didn't know how I knew this information. Therefore, I assumed I made it up. So, by not knowing where the information came from or that there even was information, it washed through my brain and resulted in me speaking words that included information I could verify. I didn't judge it, I just spoke it. This is another example of using my training as a psychologist, but this time it was helpful. I didn't judge the material. Instead, as a psychologist, I simply observed. I learned later that I did this through the connection to my observer. I let her take the helm, and she sat back and observed as the 3D me stepped aside from the excitement of what was going on and was busy documenting the experiences. Of course, I'm the one, the 3D me, writing the experiences or dictating them in my phone, but it is the observer that's guiding me. I don't let the 3D me get involved any more than she has to, which is just to record the events. I let her sit back and wait until all of the information has been received. And then she, the 3D me, can get involved by researching. When I began channeling in August 2013, it was only after months of gathering data, and much of which could be verified, that I began to trust the information. And that trust helped me go deeper into the realms of the non physical. As you expand, your non physical senses get sharper. You'll learn how to freeze frame an experience and then later come back and delve deeper into it. But that's for another time. What I'd like you to take away from this episode is the importance of your observer and how you can work together with your observer to explore. So let's look at another assignment. If you have not yet met your observer, take some time to meet them. You don't have to wait for a spontaneous comment from them. Ask them a question. You can wait for an answer, but for some people, that answer arrives immediately. You know, sometimes before you even finish the question. Let me know your results. If you're watching this on YouTube, you can comment below. Otherwise, you can find my contact information on my website at CandiceSanderson.com. Until next time, remember, it's important to be kind to each other. Before responding to someone, ask, is what you're about to say kind? If not, perhaps it's better to say nothing. And remember, we are more than our physical bodies. Until next time.